Good afternoon. My name is Mary Beth McCucci. I am the Director of Member Learning at NAFA, and welcome to the webinar on Fleet Motor Pool Management for today's for today's diverse fleet. Before I turn things over to our moderator and speaker for today's session, there are a few housekeeping notes we need to quickly review. This session is being recorded, and a copy of that recording will be made available to you within 48 hours, along with the slides. All participants are muted during the presentation to limit background noise, but we encourage you to ask questions and add comments to the chat or the Q&A features. And you can find this on the Zoom toolbar at the bottom of your screen. And now, well, actually, if you do run into any technical questions, please feel free to reach out to the NAFA team by emailing events@nafa.org or submitting a question in the chat. And now to kick things off, it is my pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Rick Sapienza. Rick, go ahead.
Mary Beth, thank you. Appreciate it. I'd like to welcome our panelists as well as our audience. This is the Sustainable Fleet Technology webinar series. And as Mary Beth said, today is motor pool management for today's diverse fleets. And, most folks have some flavor of motor pool management, but I think the point we want to go with here is, this is the Fleet Technology series, is how technology can help you. Motor pool management helps you increase your utilization, right size and reduce your fleet count, which saves you money. But we want to, drive home how technology has changed over time and how it can make you drive even more efficiency and do things better. So that's the point here today. Do want to have a shout out here to our sponsors for this series. They allow us to bring this to you folks. As you've heard over and over, that we are an underfunded organization here, so we need to close the gap, and we do things like the webinar series. We do some fleet consulting, fee-for-service type stuff, and we do the Sustainable Fleet Technology Conference that I hope a lot of you folks have been to at least or know of. Do want to point out the Green Fleet Garage Contest is open till Friday, so finish up your applications, folks that are out in the audience. And if you haven't, it's not a real rigorous one. It's not as rigorous as the Green Fleet Awards or the 100 Best Fleets. We make this to be a little bit more fun. But all these contests, if you're honest and you sit down and go through the application, you learn some things about your fleet. You'll be able to identify some opportunities and gaps. I've had folks tell me that it's like having a consultant come in and, basically for free, just a little bit of your time. Upcoming webinars, the last one in this series, the SFT series, is on December 13th, and it's renewable fuels to meet your carbon reduction goals. We do have 3 product feature webinars where we focus in on a technology or strategy. On November 8th, we'll be looking at biodiesel, so beyond B20 and how to do that. Sourcewell is going to help us with a fleet electrification learning session, and then TBD is ChemPower. It's a cutting-edge EV charging technology, and they have customizable solutions. So those will be the 3 we'll round out this year and hopefully get it done. Format is, if you've been on this before, we hold a Q&A till the end. Submit your questions and comments to the chat. We're scheduled for 2 to 3:15. The objective is to get our presentations done before 3 p.m. and leave some time for Q&A. As Mary Beth said, there's recording and a handout. Those will be sent out to everyone that registered within 48 hours. Just to point out, sustainablefleetexpo.com. That is the website where all this information is contained. It's also the website for the conference. We're targeting late next summer. We've had some issues in terms of securing a site, and our sponsor has dragged their feet on some things. But previous webinars going back 3 years, the handouts and recordings are there, as well as the same for the conference over the last couple of years. So we'll place, and you can also register for our last session coming up in December. Here's my contact information. I'm here as a resource. I'm here to help. I'll help you in any way I can with my knowledge, and if I can't help you, I will find somebody that can help you on technology and strategy and trends related to fleet. Our speakers for today, Rudy Six, the CEO of Inverse, is going to kick it off here. Rudy's been immersed in the car sharing industry since its inception in the early 90s. He's been fortunate to lead a team of some of the most talented individuals that are driven, goal-oriented, and caring. Working with industry leaders, mobility operators, and fleet professionals of all kinds around the world, Inverse Mobility Solutions is working towards enabling access to shared mobility for every driver. After Rudy, Frank Dean, the business development manager with focus on green fleets for Alltech, a leading provider of products and services to the electric utility, telecommunications, tree care, lights and signs, and contractor markets. He works with companies globally, aligning user experience, innovative solutions, and corporate objectives. Then we're going to have our two end user fleets they're going to talk about what they've been up to, and Robert Crawford, the administration manager for General Services Administration at the County of Ventura, California. He has a 40-year career spanning construction, sales, and sales management. He has a degree in organizational management from the University of Laverne and began working for the County of Ventura's fleet as an accountant in 2014. He transitioned to administration manager in 2018. He manages the County of Ventura fleet's 11 Motorpool locations, 6 fuel islands, and budget analysis for 1,800 vehicles and equipment with an annual budget of over $25 million. Mike Heath, a fleet design specialist at Salt River Project, a community-based non-for-profit organization providing affordable water and power to more than 2 million people in central Arizona. He's worked in the transportation arena for almost 47 years. Out of high school, he completed the heavy-duty journeyman apprenticeship with Detroit Diesel Allison, and for the last 7 years worked in field service all over Arizona. He has 38 years of service with Salt River Project, all in Transportation Services Department. Most recently, he supports the Green Fleet, Alternative Fuels, Telematics, and Motorpool kiosk systems. Quickly, the agenda, I kind of went through it with our speakers. Rudy's going to kick it off kind of with an overview of Motorpool. Frank Dean is actually one of our sponsors. I've tried to integrate in subtly some input and information on our sponsors. This time I'm going to be a lot less subtle, and Frank's going to talk about the job site energy management system, GEMS, that they have. And then, like I said, our two end users are going to talk about their experience and how they're living in the modern world of technology and Motorpool. And then we'll go to Q&A. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Rudy. Rudy, you can take over from here.
Great, thank you. Yeah, good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're calling in from. And a big thank you for the opportunity to kick off today's discussion here around fleet Motorpool management. When Rick asked me to join today, after that, I was wondering, what could I best contribute? As a veteran of 30 years in the car sharing industry, and the more I thought about it, the more it formed, and I ended up thinking, well, why don't I just talk exactly about that, about the evolution and how automated Motorpool came about. Much of it came out of the sharing industry and the car sharing industry and the sharing economy at large. So hopefully you will find some nuggets in there. Here's a quick outline about what I'm intending to talk about here today. And so let's get started. Car sharing. It all started in Europe as early as 1948, actually, more on the theory and study side of things. But the idea of car sharing was born as early as 1948. First operators started emerging 1987 out of Switzerland, shortly after Germany, then Canada, Netherlands, Singapore, and also the United States with CarShare Portland 1998, as well as names that some of you may be familiar with, FlexCar and Zipcar, pretty big US-based operators, Zipcar still being in operations today. And then in 2008, and I'll get back to that in a moment here, a really key point in the industry was when the first OEM joined the scene, and this was Daimler. Daimler launched a program, Car2Go. And what was unique about Car2Go is, contrary to the early car share operators, which is what in the industry is called round-trip car sharing. So it's like rental cars. You pick up the vehicle in one location, use it, bring it back to the same location. What Car2Go brought to the picture here is you pick up the vehicle in one location and you drop it off in a different location. So one-way vehicle rental. What does this mean from a technology perspective? The early days, it was literally pen and paper. So the first organizations in Switzerland, you would call an office, they will scribble down who you are, which vehicle you would like to have. It was literally a notebook where reservations were being kept track and keys were being dispatched out of little key boxes, or maybe they were behind the license plate in little lock boxes, as was the case in 1994 with Modo up here in Canada. Inverse is a university startup company. I got involved in the early days there out of the electrical engineering department in Germany. And pretty much right away, we came up with two solutions. One was the key box solution, where you can have multiple vehicles in one parking lot central location being dispatched out of there. And also a remote dispatch system for those single vehicle locations. In car sharing, it's often that you would want to have, you would prefer, if you had 100 vehicles, you'd rather have them in 100 different locations throughout the entire city than all in one parking lot. Whereas in fleet, little different there, of course. In fleet, you tend to have more central locations and then perhaps also some remote locations that you would like to serve. Now, when we first got started, it was all around the technology, being an engineering company. And then we quickly learned that's not going to work. So we got into the software business as well. By call of one of our customers was actually the folks out of Singapore. They said, we love this. They had traveled the entire world. We want your technology, but we're not software developers. So we got into software. And then the market expanded from public car sharing to the corporate car sharing or motor pools. And as mentioned, Car2Go kind of changed a little bit the picture in the car sharing world, and was, from a technology perspective, a very, very demanding technology that was needed here. So we were up to the challenge and helped roll out Car2Go's first program. Now, just like the first day in car sharing, if I put these pictures in front of you, they might look awfully familiar from motor pools. Often there are maybe, well, typically cars are personally assigned and then used, or maybe they are still personally assigned when you look at your fleet management system, but there are actually 5 cars assigned to one person in your fleet management system. And the reality is that there are these like mini motor pools maybe throughout the organization. And this I think is pretty close to reality. Maybe the keys aren't in the drawer, they might be on hooks on the wall. But one such case that we encountered in the early days in North America was the city of Kelowna. And looking at the next slide here, the city of Kelowna was one of the very early adopters. And when we first met, the pictures I had just put in front of you, they really hit home. That was exactly their situation. Elaine Chipclark was her name. She was responsible for that motor pool. Everybody kept yelling at her for all the things she wasn't responsible for that went sideways with the motor pool. So this solution with a single key box for the 12 vehicles at City Hall just really fit very well to them. I want to take this moment and express my thanks to NAFA, because NAFA, from my perspective, showed extraordinary leadership at the time, the educational committee. We had met on one of my road trips at the time, and the gentleman, Frank Castro was his name, said, you gotta share this at NAFA 2006. So we did that, and of course I said, what do I have to share? So I brought Dale Botry along. Lo and behold, it was a huge success. There were 200 people in this first ever presentation in North America. A full room. The top left here is the same picture. The top middle there is how I spent my time in those years, was literally with a Ford vehicle with the technology in the trunk. and going door to door, you would say, no, from fleet yard to fleet yard, and just sharing what what this technology looks like and what it could do. Many conferences followed, whether it's NAFA or NCSFA, Fed Fleet, user conferences of AssetWorks and Faster and the like. One that stood out as I was thinking about this presentation, that was really a cornerstone, was a conference by Fleet News down in San Diego. Cornerstone for many reasons, one of which is we met our friends from Agile Fleet here. And you can actually, those that know him, you can see Ed Smith and Matt Wade here in the picture with myself long time ago. And we're looking at the key manager. We were also together presenting at this conference on automated motor pools. And then what followed were years of essentially, I would say for the most part, agile and inverse traveling through North America, spreading the word. Many folks were involved there. I'm very grateful and would like to also mention that to lots of people actually, but outstanding out of the pack is Win Mitchell and Tom Johnson. Because when I first started, I knew car sharing, I knew nothing about fleet. Those people were very instrumental in me getting a grasp on fleet and what it really means and entails. Lots of awards to some extent were involved. I'm really I'm really happy for what, for example, Tom Johnson with 100 Best did to the industry and really shine a light on all the great work you guys are doing. Here are some examples that then followed, other leadership examples: Washington State Motorpool, Tacoma Public Utility, County of Santa Barbara, City of Raleigh, just a few that came to mind, and maybe a couple of pictures that show what they did. And really one, and I'm so happy that we will hear from Robert later on today. The County of Ventura showed extraordinary leadership, not only in automating their central pool location, which had about 30 vehicles at the time at the government center through a key manager, but also really taking the leap in saying, yeah, but okay, that's where we have our motor pool vehicles because that's where we could traditionally manage that. But we have employees all through the valley. So they introduced six, I think initially maybe, locations with our so-called standalone system at the time that is still in operation there today. And then over the years, today, I believe, Robert, you have about 90 vehicles. I counted 13 locations. I heard 11 earlier. So somewhere around there, locations overall, many of which are remote. And you'll hear from Robert later. Once again, they're gonna, I think, show some real leadership in the marketplace by taking on some next steps here. Now, looking at it from a little bit different perspective, and outside of the mobility space for a good part at least, is by looking at the sharing economy. There are things that we all know and have come to know, which is Airbnb, all the social media platforms, Uber and Lyft, shared workplaces, as well as even things like RV rentals that are being done between private owners, private people. Back in the mobility space, things happened like ride sharing, scooter sharing, moped sharing, bike sharing, automated rentals. And the latest development now is golf carts in a post-pandemic, post-COVID world. Golf carts on all these remote places that people have moved to are really taking a rise right now. Much of this mobility space is based on EV, which is also, I think, an interesting aspect. So now looking back at car sharing, and we call it car sharing 2.0 in the industry. And what that really means is car sharing has developed from what it originally was, like enterprise car share, for example. And they actually have a really good how-to video on their website that I would encourage everybody that wants to learn about remote car sharing systems, remote dispatch car share systems, single vehicle locations. I have a reference to that video on a later slide. And then, of course, there was the example of Car2Go with the free-floating one-way car sharing. Nowadays, the company is called ShareNow, which is a merger of two OEM operators. And that was recently acquired by Free2Move. So they operate through vast parts of the world and continue to show leadership there. Another scheme that emerged is called peer-to-peer car sharing. And much like RV rentals is that I mentioned earlier, It's where private people put their own vehicle onto one of these sharing economy platforms. And two examples there of is Turo as well as Getaround that you might be familiar with. But there are numerous of these platforms there. And really think about that. That's amazing. That's like, probably as many fleet managers as you have private people sharing their personal vehicle through these platforms with the general public. Extraordinary, really, when you think about it. And now, of course, things keep developing. And the latest thing in the world there of mobility is something that's called subscription. Subscription is really a month-to-month rental. You don't have to commit for the long term, but if you want a vehicle, you can now subscribe to it. And you can actually change the vehicle in between if you need a different kind of vehicle, or you can also get out of it fairly easily. So it's another mobility offering in the mix of, let's say, car sharing and car rental and leasing and car ownership, and of course all these other services that are in the market. Now, from a technology perspective, and if I may share a little bit about Inverse again, because I think it really reflects the economy and the developments in the economy. To us, what became clear is, we kind of, could now go back to the roots. Remember, I mentioned earlier, we really are at heart a technology company, and not so much a software company in terms of software for the end rental process towards users or the operators. But our core competence is really in making any type of vehicle shareable for any kind of business need. You saw in the previous slide, there are all these different flavors nowadays of vehicle sharing. They all have different demands. You can't do that all with the same software. So we decided to get out of the software business and really focus on making any kind of vehicle in the marketplace shareable for any kind of business case. And then the other thing it meant is that key managers kind of became old. Nobody really actually needed them anymore, sort of on a broad scale. I know they have their place still in fleet as well. So that led to us discontinuing, or we're in the process of discontinuing all our legacy systems as well as our software, because what happened is we now have a new revamped system that makes any asset shareable. And we do this together with our software partners, well over 20 software partners that serve all these different market needs with different flavors of software. Now, what this meant is back on the road again. So Robert might smile, and thank you again, Robert, for hosting one of the workshops we did last year in the summer down in Southern California, where Robert is located. And down there, I guess COVID appropriate, this was me now traveling a little bit more in style than 15 years ago. So I pulled the trailer behind me, and that Inverse branded vehicle there had all the sharing technologies installed, so I could do a proper roadshow. It was a cool trip. That's in the background, Smith Rocks in Oregon, by the way. Yeah, I think that's the notable things on there. So let's go back to automated Motorpool. And I think there are a lot of things that can be said and can be shared, and lessons learned over the last 15, coming on to almost 20 years of how to go about automated Motorpools. Like once you've decided you want to get into it, what is a good, sensible way to go into it? Here is a case or a white paper that we wrote a number of years ago that I'd be happy to share. So just pop me an email afterwards if you'd like a copy of this. But really the core of it is, define a four-step process, define your goals, measure the metrics that are relevant to your operation, investigate your options, whether they're technology or other things. A lot of it is about the geography you're in and the layout of your organization. And the people you serve and all of that. And then maybe prove your case, maybe do a little pilot or something and make sure that what you envision actually suits your operation. There are many resources, and the upcoming 2 slides here is basically a collection of things that came to my mind that might be of value to you to look at and read through. So obviously the industry organizations like NAFA and Government Fleet, they have great resources on their websites. There are lots of other white papers out there. I think specifically I would like to call out the collection of white papers that Agile Fleet has on their website. It's outstanding. There are a few videos and webinars that I think are worthwhile mentioning. So there's the one that I mentioned earlier by Enterprise. It really shows how such a remote car share system, remote location Motorpool vehicle system would look like. So if you haven't seen it, that's a good way to get a look at it. There's also a webinar that was recently held by Toyota Kinto, which is an operator providing vehicles to the gig drivers out there. So basically Uber and Lyft drivers. How do they get the vehicle that they use to drive you around? Surprisingly, maybe a little bit, but they get it off a car sharing platform. Lots of lessons learned that Kinto shared here in their endeavor of scaling up to 1,500 vehicles. And for those considering technology, there are some great technology pointers in there as well. Specific to fleet, you may wish to check out the recent webinar earlier this year or end of last year, something like that, from Jewish Family Services. And they're speaking to their concrete transition from Motorpool to keyless vehicle sharing. And with that, lastly, and I apologize for the busy slide here, it's meant for you to have at hand after the webinar as a reference. But what are some of the things that I found over the years in my mind that are most important? And specifically when I think about the fleet industry and the fleet managers, it's a little bit of a different focus, I think. And I would put it in short, think about your drivers, not the asset. Much in fleet evolves around the asset, but this all around evolves around the drivers. Think about convenience, not utilization. With the train of thought here being, if you make it convenient, utilization will follow automatically. You don't need to focus on it. Do it with a reliable technology. That seems obvious. Vehicle security, i.e. immobilization, might be of importance. Vehicle data is cool and sexy. It's not relevant really to a good extent when it comes to sharing. What's relevant is that the vehicle always opens and closes when you need it to, because that's when the next customer wants to get into the vehicle. And then tying back to the 4-step process there, have a plan and once again, make it convenient, be clear on what your goals are. Maybe things even like, and we've seen this over and over again and haven't always been the best at doing it ourselves either. Take note of where you are today, because nobody will remember 10 years, 15 years down the road. And in terms of a goal, set yourself some goals. Where do you want to be in 5 years and 10 years? Then you may start small if necessary, or you may jump all the way forward and use one of these really modern ways of managing your fleet. There is no right or wrong. One thing that I would like to point out is if you were to jump all the way forward and use some of these really modern systems, they're all, by the way, all these sharing economy things that I mentioned, they're all smartphone based, they're all app based. If you were to jump there, and I know in fleet there are some challenges with that, so you can use RFID cards as well. But that's where your drivers are already today. That's what they do in their private lives. That's what they use. They use all the things in the sharing economy, at least a lot of your drivers. So they may not be as far out of reach as it may seem at first. With that, I hope there were some good nuggets in here for you. Please don't hesitate at all to reach out. Happy to connect, happy to think about, listen to what your situation is and think about who I know and make some introductions that may help you further. Thank you.
Rudy, thank you. Appreciate it. Good, I guess, summary of the journey here and then where we are technology wise. I mean, and, part of the point there is don't set it and forget it. I mean, things change very quickly in the industry across the board, and that's, the nature of technology. Also really appreciate the resources and then your guideline bullet points at the end. So we appreciate it. And with that, I'm going to let Frank Dean with Alltech talk a little bit about their system. It's not quite Motorpool, but it's in line with technology and what we're trying to do here with fleets.
Hey, thank you, Rick. Thank you, Rick. That's a great presentation. Rick, I love the comment, don't set it and forget it. I am going to try to be a little subtle, and I appreciate you making that comment. We're focused on the electrification of medium and heavy duty trucks, and these are trucks that operators are using to perform work at the job site or use them to work out of these jobs, not work out of these trucks, not only drive them to the job site, but use them to perform work at the job site. We've been in this market of electrifying trucks for over 10 years. And whether it's medium duty, heavy duty, which is our focus, or carpool sharing or other applications, lighter duty trucks, the goal that doesn't change is to eliminate vehicle emissions. And that's what we're focused on. The key point we've learned in over these 10 years, and we feel that it applies to multiple market segments, for this technology to be successful, it has to have three things. And that's got to be easy to use, it's got to be highly reliable, and it's got to include the latest technology. So that's really what we've learned. And whether it's our products or other segments, such Rudy had a slide with scooters on them, golf carts, we feel that even across all those segments, if you can only check 2 of the 3 boxes, to keep looking, we really need to check. It's got to be easy to use, highly reliable, and include the latest technology. These are just a few samples of our electrification solutions. I mentioned the operators, they're performing work at the job site with these trucks using electrified technology. I mentioned also that it has to be easy to use and highly reliable. We want our operators to pull up to the job site and operate these trucks, whether it's a diesel truck that they've been used to operating for 20, 30, 40 plus years, or if it's our electrification solutions. We say that we want a cohesive user experience or not interrupt the operator's workflow. So whether it's an electrified solution or our jump solution that you see here, or diesel, that they all operate exactly the same, delivering that reliability and the ease of use that I mentioned. And I mentioned the latest technology. It could be the most advanced lithium battery technology. It could be fast charging. But in this instance, it's in the importance of collecting and monitoring fleet performance data with electrification solutions. Our customers want to make sure they're maximizing this technology with their operators, and that their operators are adopting this technology. This isn't a big brother, but it's really to use it to maximize performance or electrification solutions in their segment. Our customers' goals are really focused on eliminating emissions and reporting emission goals. And with the ability to track this kind of data, it gives them that ability. So I mentioned, for what we've learned over these 10 years, the technology has to be reliable, easy to use, include the latest technology. And that's what we're focused on today. And it's the kind of technology or product development we'll continue to focus on in the future. Thank you, Rick.
Frank, I appreciate it. Thank you. Good information. And I guess we'll call it back to our regularly scheduled program. We're going to have the County of Ventura tell their story, and he's got it, Motorpool and technology. And we'll let Robert Crawford talk about what they're doing. And all yours, Robert.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate that. Thank you, Mary Beth. Thank you all for hosting this. Robert Crawford, I'm with the County of Ventura Fleet Services. I'm the administrative manager, and I manage the motor pools here. I came into this from the accounting field and then from the sales management field. And so I just wanted to share some information that I know probably a lot of you are already doing, so it might be repetitive. I know Rudy talked a little bit about it. You'll see some repeat pictures, but I'll just share some information about how I think we transitioned from the notepad and the key locker at someone's desk into using technology to help us with that. So next slide, please. I can find as far back as the late 80s that we did have a what they call a motor pool at the time, and it was probably a lot of handwritten notes. I couldn't find any. I don't have any evidence, but I do know people were saying, "Oh yeah, there used to be cars back then." It was just either a manned kiosk or a manned desk, and you walk up or you call and say, "Hey, do you have a vehicle?" And they pick up the keys. And so our the main motor pool was at our Hall of Administration main building. And so we called that the Central Motor Pool, and I could identify about 16 vehicles at that time. We are a highly decentralized county. So in addition to the Central Motor Pool and our Hall Administration, there are approximately another 60 owned and leased buildings and facilities throughout our county where employees work. So we'll approach some of that or talk to them about that when we start talking about some of our remote motor pools. I could find the first purchase order I found for Inverse was in 2012. I know Rudy said it might have been 2009. Total vehicles at that time were about 44 in our central motor pool. When we first started with the Inverse hardware and support, we had a single key box, and then we added another key box to that as well. Or the key manager, excuse me. And you can see what it looks like today. I think we have a third key box in there now. So this is an older photo. And then the following year in 2013, we did branch out to our remote locations, 11 sites, and we put a vehicle each one. We pulled some out of the central motor pool. And by the end of 2013, we had bumped those vehicles up. We had a total of about 50 vehicles because now we have access, we have information, we have tracking ability, and we have the ability for customers to go online and make reservations. So there was a demand for it. There were requests for it. So following up, we were able to expand that way. So next slide, please. Part of what we looked at on this was recovering our costs as a county agency, and as a municipality, of course, we have to recover our costs. And so we are what's called an ISF, an internal service fund, and we're able to bill back to those agencies that use our vehicles and collect our costs. So just a real quick brief on this. We do have the fixed rates, which relates into and correlates into an hourly rate, where we try to get all of our fixed costs recovered, spread out over different vehicle systems, and based on the count and mileage and so forth, or hours used. But system cost, depreciation, overhead, and then the support costs. And then we added a secondary rate, which is the mileage rate, which covers our operations, maintenance, and some salary allocations with a fuel charge, a fuel surcharge added onto that. Our current multiple count is down now to 72. We did have more. We've been pulling some out, moving them around. We do have to watch our costs. We have to try to keep our hourly rate kind of in line. We need to keep our vehicles a little fresh. So anytime you put a new vehicle in, our depreciation costs go up, so it affects our hourly rate. So we're sensitive to that, managing that as best we can to make sure we still have good, fresh, usable vehicles, but the cost is still palatable to the county agencies. We've got great support from our board of supervisors and from the CEO's office. They do support our motor pool, so that's good to have, and it allows us to be flexible in that area. In addition to the rate development, we want to make sure we analyze, and Rudy said that don't focus on the data, but from a cost recovery standpoint, there has to be some of that there. We did notice after a while from a remote motor pool expansion that we had a lower revenue stream. We set up the system for central motor pool that would auto shorten, so that when they brought the keys back or they fobbed out through the fob on the window and entered the reservation, it would shorten. But what we found out is, and I think a lot of you probably understand this, whoever controls the keys controls the utilization of the vehicle. And so we had customers hoarding keys and making it difficult for other customers to get reservations. So through just communications with the departments, communications with that location, and learning and education for customers, how do we best get the most usage and available hours available for the vehicle without having to overcharge, or we need to make sure the keys are getting shared. We had trouble with that, so we removed the auto shortening with the understanding that, well, if you're going to hold the keys for the whole day and not share the vehicle with others, you're going to pay for the whole day. We did, and so we would bill reservation length versus the actual usage. Some may agree with that, some may disagree, but in order to let the customers know that in order for us to cover our costs, we need to have as many people, as many butts in seats as we can, and as much hour behind the wheel as we can. And again, Rudy, I apologize, you say focus on the customer and not the asset, but from this particular standpoint, we're trying to do both. We want to make sure that we can have satisfied customers and recover our costs as best as possible. So we did start getting better compliance. Revenue stream was better in line. We were starting to recover our costs better by working with the departments, but also, hey, if you're going to hoard the key, if you really need the vehicle for the whole day, we need to charge it for the whole day. So next slide, please. We added telematics. When we started talking about technology, we added telematics countywide in 2015 as in an effort to not just see the usage data, but also those things like engine telemetrics and GPS locations, and it also helps with safety when we talk about speeding. But it turns out that it's an additional tracking mechanism for motor pools, in addition to using inverse and using the software to show customers, here's how your employees are using the system. Well, here's the telematics to back up where it was and where it went and how many stops they made, and are your employees doing what you're asking them to do? We didn't make any adjustments to our auto shortening, mainly because this is another mechanism. Telematics is another technology that allows the department heads to say, hey, it shows here that, for example, the vehicle didn't move for 3 hours. Tell me what was happening at that time when you're supposed to be out visiting, visiting nurses program or doing certain things. So the telematics also, from a utilization standpoint, allowed us to determine from a demand standpoint, where's the best place to have the vehicle. So if we said, hey, 6 vehicles at this location is the number, and there's only 4, and then we've got 12 over here, but really 6 is the number over there, we can actually pull vehicles and move them around with data and understanding the data, so that we can level our demand across sites. And as you are able to communicate that information with customers, you certainly get better cooperation with the policies that we ask for utilization. Again, utilization has taken a front and center seat for us through overall countywide analysis. We do notice that we have a pretty large footprint, and we do have some underutilized standard type vehicles that need some more attention. From a motor pool standpoint, they can, like I said, they can track stop to stop, and that's helpful for them. A quick point I wanted to make for the County of Ventura, for the Fleet Services Department, we manage and repair and service and take care of the vehicles, but we don't manage the drivers. In the motor pool, those are our vehicles. It's a fleet vehicle. So those drivers, we do pay attention to, and we do track usage, we do track safety, speeding, stops, and so forth. And if there are violations or there are things that are a problem, we address those ourselves. If we see something that needs the attention of the department, we can certainly share that with them as well. The bulk of our agencies countywide have assigned vehicles that they are paying capital on. So motor pools that are at these locations are what we consider extra vehicles, or it's more of a privilege. We're not required to produce those vehicles there or place those vehicles. Again, it's a revenue decision, it's a cost recovery decision, and if it can be utilized and it helps the customers, then it works well. But it has to be kind of a mutual or symbiotic relationship. We do help when we do place a motor pool. We let the departments understand what their total cost of transportation is, because we kind of own that data with the telematics and the capital recovery on their fixed assets, their fixed assigned vehicles. And then here's what they're spending each year or each month on motor pool. There's also a substantial, some departments have a substantial personal mileage reimbursement. And it's helped with, believe it or not, with that type of analysis of having customers turn in vehicles. Agencies say, hey, wait a minute, why am I walking past all these vehicles every day that we're paying fixed capital, overhead, and costs, and we have tires that we're replacing, but we're not putting miles on? To be able to show them, well, here's where your transportation usage is happening through telematics. Here's who's using the vehicles, and here's using what vehicles. Combine that with the motor pool and then the personal miles reimbursement. They can say, hey, our costs are out of control. We're going to turn in. We've had 29 to 30, about 31 turn-ins in the last 18 months based on that information. So that helps them and it helps us. We do warn them, though, to make sure that as you're looking at these type of things and you're managing your data and you're managing your drivers, that if you're wanting to make sure that your assigned and capitalized vehicles and fixed vehicles are being used, but you don't manage your keys, now you have people get frustrated and then jump into their personal vehicle and go. And that's how you end up having people walk by vehicles that aren't getting used. So you don't want to transfer the cost of your fixed costs, still have to pay those, and then turn around and pay a mileage reimbursement when a vehicle could have been utilized. So, and then to add that from a utilization standpoint, our county leadership, as we make large jumps through CARB, the California Air Resources Board, and some CARB demands and mandates on electric vehicle transitions or zero emission transitions, the county says, well, wait a minute, that's going to be expensive, but you don't use this vehicle very much. Why would we replace an underutilized vehicle with a vehicle that's probably anywhere from 50 to 75% higher in cost? Plus we got to dig into the ground and put a charging port up. So it's become more important to leadership for our county. So next slide, please. And so just a real quick history, 2016, we put in, from an electric vehicle standpoint, we bought 3 Ford Escapes that had about 35 miles available battery, but that did not meet the needs of our motor pool. The capacity was too low. So we ended up taking them out in 2019 and just selling them at auction and taking a loss, only because we couldn't find enough use for them. 2017, we added 10 volts, the plug-in hybrids. Those have become very popular, and they are well utilized. 2019, we transitioned 14 compact vehicles out and put in 14 volts into the central motor pool. The central motor pool just so happens that it has our largest captive demand and the best utilization of all of our vehicles. So it made sense to do that. That's since become our second most popular vehicle behind a minivan. And then in 2020, we did another 18 volts at the remote locations, and with a partnership, and of course we purchased some Beam EV solar arcs for our charging needs. We do have, as I mentioned, a lot of remote facilities or non-owned facilities. So instead of digging up the ground or having to pay capital costs to have infrastructure work done at leased locations or skipping leased locations completely, we found this as a viable alternative. So we get some free solar charging for our 18 electric vehicles at 4 different locations. So next slide, please. The upgraded technology and other technology we're using, of course, the charge point dashboards and charge point information. And I just say charge point, but I think electric vehicle charging equipment is all going to have some type of a dashboard or support or monitoring that's available. We do use Geotab. We do use Inverse as well. And to Rudy's point, we do have the key managers, and we've got key boxes in the remote vehicles. And I mentioned Beam, which are the EV solar chargers. The technology does help us kind of all together. We're able to assist customers. We watch battery levels. When you get, so Southern California, we have nice weather a lot, but we also we had 9 straight days of cloudy weather. So we did have some challenges with keeping the batteries charged in the EV arcs and able to move battery and move power into the batteries of the cars. So we do watch battery levels. We're able to use that information and cycle our customers to higher charged vehicles or a potential gas vehicle if needed, making the reservation adjustments. We do watch the capacity because we want to make sure that the solar charger stays on all the time, or the charging station attached to the solar charger stays charged all the time. And then, of course, the data that we get has helped us with utilization and safety as well. So next slide, please. To Rudy's point, with our motor pools and the depth and popularity of it, since we're going to be losing some of the hardware and software technology from Inverse, we are piloting with a company called Launch Mobility. We will be piloting some of our remote motor pool vehicles and using the Launch Mobility app in conjunction with the iBox from Inverse. And let's see how, we need to find out if the customers are going to be amenable to this, and then actually how well it works. And then on the back end, looking at some reporting, some dashboards, and then customer service is going to be important. So with that, that's all I have. That's what I have there. I'm glad to share that. We're looking forward to this newer technology and seeing how our customers deal with that. And then just again, less hardware and more app-based. And like I said, I hope our customers like it. So thank you.
Robert, thank you. I appreciate it. And you've demonstrated the balancing act that you have with a number of inputs, and you are running a business. It has to make financial sense to do it. And you learn over time moving vehicles to certain spots that need some and some that have too many. And then you brought up, I hope we can have a discussion about it, is you really don't want a big benefit we've seen with folks that have done Motorpool is reducing the personal vehicle use reimbursement. You have assets that you have to pay for, and you want to use them versus somebody jumping in their own car. And the rate has gone up quite a bit, and I think your cost is a little lower than what you have to pay them for using a personal vehicle. So we're gonna move on to Salt River Project, and Mike Heath. Mike, you out there?
I'm here.
There you are. Great. Good to see you, Mike. Gonna hand it over to you and talk about how you guys are doing it.
I first want to thank Mary Beth and Rick, and of course Rudy, Frank, and Robert for the fine presentations. They mentioned some stuff I didn't include in mine, but we all deal with that with the Motorpools. Next slide. Salt River Project is an electric and water utility in Phoenix, Arizona. As Rick has said before, we have 1,136,000 customers. We have 5,132 employees, and we take care of all the watershed that comes into the valley through the lakes. We manage the lakes and the gas-fired power plants in the Phoenix Valley area, along with Palo Verde and Coronado. In our fleet, we have 2,448 pieces of equipment. 1,589 are considered alternate fueled, and some of those run on biodiesel. We use 100% biodiesel in all of our fleet. 10.2% are electrified. Go next slide. As I stated, over 2,400. We have 8 Motorpool kiosks in our system currently. One does not have a key box. It's a reservation system for some specialized department. We're also planning on adding another kiosk. We started with like 3 kiosks. And we had departments that actually give up their vehicles to put them in the Motorpool because of the reservation system. It works so well with managing the vehicles and the reservations, late returns, all that seemed to go away. People hoarding keys, when you have a parking lot full of Motorpools and you can't find a key for them because everybody's got one in their pocket because they may have to go somewhere, it just wasn't working. Like I said before, 100% of our sedans are full electric or plug-in electric hybrids. We have 650 EV chargers for fleet and workplace. Along with that, SRP was selected as the #1 place in Arizona for workplace charging. At this time, we do not charge our employees for workplace charging because we're trying to promote the use of electric vehicles. SRP and several of the other founding members of the Valley of the Sun Clean Cities Coalition was recognized by the Department of Energy and Clean Cities and Communities for what we've done to get rid of the dependency on foreign oil. SRP is in the top 50 Green Fleet Awards, and we're in the top 100 best fleets. We have EV rates and special EV for our customers. Here it says 232 battery electric vehicles, plug-in electric or hybrid electric. That includes some forklifts and stuff. Next slide. In our pools, currently we have 77 total vehicles. We just incorporated 4 of our 5 Ford Lightnings into the Motorpool, so our customers can use them. And as you notice, all these vehicles are backed in. We practice attack backing for safety. So everybody shows up at the site at a different time. If you back in, then when your meeting or your function is over and you leave, everybody's leaving at the same time. So it's easier to pull out. If there's 2 employees in a vehicle, we always require one to get out, help guide. We do have backup cameras in all of our vehicles, whether it come from the factory with it or not. We install it for safety, but it's a tool. It's still on the required for the driver. Like I said, we had 8 locations now. Next slide. This is one of our spillways where we did a video on YouTube that we were promoting moving all of our sedan fleet to 100% either electric or plug-in electric. And this is one of our spillways for one of our large lake reservoirs. That's 3 days of my life I'll never get back. One day to coordinate all the vehicles and get them up there. And we drove them through for the video, and then that took a whole day, and then a day to get them all back to the rightful location and ready for service the next day. We do try to make our electric vehicles brand SRP. We do water safety is that one on the top right. We do infrastructure, the lower right. We also have a solar panel one. We have a wind turbine. We have a wildlife conservation. We have a regular water one. It shows water in the dams and stuff. And we use Clipper Creek chargers, and they're not a smart charger. We just wanted to get infrastructure in. We use Geotab to report vehicles not being charged if they're in an area, and along with our Motorpool kiosk. Next slide. We use Agile Fleet. This is some of the products they use. Just a terminal setup on the left. The middle is a kiosk lockbox, and it also has card access, which our security guards and custodians are looking into, and that's the kiosk that they have as a display for Agile Fleet. And next slide. This is what we use. We actually reached out to a company and had a kiosk box built. We put everything inside of it. The monitor's there, the keyboard's there. The key box that they provide, it's made to go in there and everything. And we've had very little problem with that. They've been really, we had to include a little decal because it had a trigger to open the door, and a lot of people wasn't triggering that. So it was causing some errors. They error out and they couldn't get the keys. But we've, like I said, we got 77 vehicles across 8 kiosks, and they're working really well. The biggest thing is the sharing. Let's see, there's something else I was gonna say. I think that's about it.
Oh, great, Mike. Thank you. Appreciate it. The picture's a good picture. You guys are getting a lot of use out of it, even though it took you a few days to get that done. Appreciate you guys coming in. We're gonna open up the Q&A now. A question I got as being a Green Fleet Awards judge, we ask about Motorpool management and how they're using it. And one of the things I saw over and over again was putting the electric vehicles in your motor pool to get exposure and get people to try them, and get them comfortable with it. I mean, Mike, you went plug-in hybrid or electric all the way with your light duty, but I guess, Robert, can you talk about, have you done something like that? And how's that worked for you? Because I had some really good feedback in the applications and how they did that.
Yeah, so 2018, 2019, we were kind of monitoring some of the other local municipalities when it came to electric vehicle transitions and their technology, and then their adaptation of that technology. But as a government entity, we can manage the vehicles, but then you got a place to plug in. So we knew it was going to be a cooperative thing. We watched some municipalities get punched in the nose by their city councils, and we decided, well, we're not going to have that happen. We're going to take care of that. So we set up our own strategy, which included extensive communication with our customers. The motor pools were our highest demand. The demand was captive, had the highest utilization. So it was kind of an easy, low-hanging fruit for us to say, hey, let's transition some of these and see how it goes. So communication with the customers, they all got to see pictures and updates of the construction. We sent pictures of the vehicles. We made videos of how to use the vehicle with people in the car, videotaping how they were driving and where they were going and how to watch mileage and so forth. The adoption's been fantastic. Again, then the following year, we expanded another 18. That was 14 vehicles. 18 went to the remote motor pools. So far, again, they're our second highest utilized vehicle across the county. So communication is important. Having a solid plan is important. And then, picking the right vehicle for the right job.
Right. No, exactly. That's no matter what you're doing, you need to put the right vehicle, the right job to get it done, or you're going to have headaches like you wouldn't believe.
Yep.
Any comments on, reducing personal vehicle payouts, going to a more automated system where you see real-time availability, you're able to increase your utilization for either Mike or Robert, or even Rudy. You've been out there enough and you got plenty of stories.
We the department itself reimburses employees for personal mileage. So there is a high push to use motor pools. So we're always monitoring how many vehicles are being used at each site to make sure we don't run out of a site, or like as mentioned before, we move vehicles around to accommodate that. But we have actually started retiring some of our older vehicles and getting them out of the fleet, because we were able to turn some vehicles in, because we're trying to right size our vehicles. And with using shared, instead of having a department has a vehicle that they may not use but maybe an hour a day, but they need a vehicle where they can use a motor pool, and there's 3 departments that use that vehicle during that day. That's why we've been able to reduce our vehicles. But also the electric vehicles and stuff, and back in the day when electric vehicles first come, or they wasn't even manufactured by the OEMs, they were converted. They were a lot of work, watering the batteries and connections and stuff like that. Now these vehicles actually have reduced our workload. We don't have oil changes to do on the full electrics. We bring them in routinely to check tire pressure and just make sure there's not something wrong with the tire, or the brakes are good. We check them over, but we don't have some of that weekly or monthly maintenance on them, because they've been very good vehicles.
Oh, that's a good point. I mean, the electric vehicles have evolved. Robert talked about the early ones that with 30, 40 miles of range, and it just didn't work for you. Now everything's up over 200 miles. You don't really need to charge from everything, and it's a good fit for fleet. And that I don't know what your average mileage per day, but I'd be very surprised if it was over 100 miles. So
that's about right.
Yeah, so that vehicle fits pretty good. Let me see what we got here. I don't know what I did. Let's go to the.
I'll make a brief comment, if you don't mind, Rick, regarding the personal mileage reimbursement.
Sure.
We do use a lot of the data to share. We meet quarterly with our operations managers for these agencies, and sometimes either deputy directors or directors. We talk about on-demand use. Mike mentioned that. When we identify the utilization actually equals on-demand use, a fixed asset that they're paying capital on that does not get used above 50%, they really need to consider whether or not to turn it in. Number one, because they're paying the fixed cost, but number two, if it's below 50, we're not going to replace it. It's one of the new policies we put in until you can manage to get that vehicle up from a utilization standpoint. So if your analysis shows on-demand usage of vehicles, you have too big of a vehicle footprint. You need to drop that down and get into the motor pool, because that's where on-demand is most beneficial.
Right. Now that's a big one, and it's dollars and cents. What do we got? This question here. Let me see. Initially, I was talking about justifying. Initially, they used used vehicles part of the Motorpool program. New vehicles are combination. How are new vehicles justified? I mean, you talked about your depreciation costs when you do a new vehicle. Also, you want happy customers. You don't want to put them in the old beaters that probably should be scrapped in some cases.
So it's a cost consideration that we have to always keep front of mind, mainly because of the fixed costs and how we have to get those recovered. So the answer to that question is yes, we did have a series of some used vehicles. If we get something that gets turned in early from an department because they hate my fixed costs are too high, let me use Motorpool, we'll clean it up and use it if it's got some usable life left. Other than that, if in order to manage better, our minivans are our number one vehicle. Those are the other things we look at too. If we get one that's got some good life left because it gets turned in, we'll put that in as well. Other than that, we are looking more at new stuff because we're not going to be able to buy gas after a while. We're also leveraging outside money for infrastructure. So once we get the plug set up, the selection of a gas vehicle is going to be less option and more towards EVs.
And here's one I don't think was addressed. With the motor pools, how do you handle pre and post trip inspections on the vehicles? Do you leave that to the customer, or do you guys have personnel that do it? How's that handled?
We the vans, and we have a Suburban, when it goes out, we normally have it checked over by our mechanic at night. He'll make sure it's clean, got fuel, but we rely a lot on the after reservation comments that comes through our fleet commander. It's Agile Fleet Commander that comes in. I monitor those. At 8 o'clock at night, I may get a vehicle returned. I'll send that to the garage, and they're real good about supporting that effort, so it's ready to go by 5 o'clock in the morning. Also, when we take it out for maintenance, we try to use a reservation to take it out, a maintenance reservation, because my phone will be the one that rings when a customer goes to get that vehicle and it's not there because the guys have got it in the garage, putting a windshield in it or something like that. So we try to use the maintenance, and we work, unless it's a safety issue, we work around the pending reservations, but we do use the Agile Fleet Commander system.
Very similar for us with the inverse system. It's a post-trip questionnaire, and then we follow up on those questions that come through. If it's anything other than a high review or a positive review, or if it's identified as a problem, we'll follow up. And each of our central Motorpool location and most of our remotes are not that far away from. We have 3 sets of shops that are throughout the county. We can get to a vehicle if we need to, and also, as Mike does, we do what's called a service reservation. So it's not available on the reservation board. Customers aren't trying to reserve something that's not there, so we're able to do that. To address the question specifically, we do depend a lot on the customers to clean up their trash, police their trash and personal items out of the vehicle, make sure that there's nothing less than a half a tank of gas, so that the next person that wants to use it has got to it. The car wash, the drive-through car wash is free for the Motorpool. They just swipe the fob that they're using. And that gets covered by fleet. So the options are available in that respect. And then there's just follow-up from the shops if there's a maintenance issue.
Okay. Is there any difference in your Motorpool vehicles in terms of your life cycle? How do you age them out? Age, mileage, and what is the bogey for that?
So for us, we look at that, but we also look at through a program called Flagship. We also measure the severity of the use and then how much maintenance costs are reflected based on the uses of the vehicle, but also kind of compared to prior years. If in the third year of use, the current year we have now compared to the third year, how high is it? And we rate it by points. When it reaches a certain point of value, it becomes visible to us as a potential replacement. Then we go back and analyze to make sure what have we recovered for our fixed costs? What kind of funds do we have to replace that? Because again, it's our vehicle. We have to kind of watch that. If it can manage another year through operations, we'll do a safety check and maintenance check on it. Yes, it'll go one more year. Let's see if we can get another year's fixed costs on it so that we have more money in the bank to buy the replacement. So.
Okay, so it isn't in a straight mileage or age. You got a number of factors you guys look at.
That's correct.
Miles, hours, and age are the normal contributors, but also costs, maintenance costs, repair costs.
Right.
Or 35-mile battery availability. We pull those out right away.
Well, that's an old vehicle at this point in time anyway. It should have been gone.
Oh, we auctioned them as quick as we could.
Yeah, well, good. I think the questions are kind of petering out here. Let's see. I'll give our audience one more chance at it, but in the meantime, just really close. We did a great job today in terms of timing. We're just inside our thing. I guess I'll leave it to our panelists. Any final words of wisdom or reinforcement of a point you made or a new point that got missed? Rudy?
Maybe if I may, I feel like I should correct maybe my wording on the data aspect a little bit. What I meant what I meant to say there is, of course, data is super important and also available in abundance of data. But when you look around at technology, don't forget that it is most and much more important that the technology you choose works in the first place, because that's not necessarily a given. That's I guess what I meant to say. So it's super important that the technology works at all times under all conditions in all scenarios, whether it's like connectivity or geographically underground parking, those kind of things. If you have a service issue where your drivers won't be able to actually start their trip or end their trip or pause their trip, go to a meeting or so, then you have way other issues. And that's, for example, pointed out in that video or webinar by Toyota Kinto, because they literally hit a wall at 800 vehicles. They had demand, they had customers, but they couldn't scale anymore without scaling their operational issues. That's where I think that comment came from. Otherwise, at the point that Robert described, I love the data that you presented there, Robert, and you're doing exactly with the data what's then important in the next step, which is to use the data to learn about user behavior, for example, and then perhaps use billing or other instruments to try and tweak that behavior towards a more coherent, a more agreeable usage of or behavior of your customers in using the shared assets.
Thank you for that. That's what happens when you invite an accountant onto the webinar. He geeks out over data just a little bit.
Well,
I love it.
Well, be it good or bad, fleet management's all about the numbers and the data nowadays. It's not, this is the way we've always done it. This is what I feel. And you can't just do one of these up in the wind and do it. You got to have the data to back it up to get support across your organization. It's just got to make sense. And fortunately, we have the data. We're good on that count. We're at about time here, and the questions, like I said, have petered out. So I really appreciate people hanging in there. And I appreciate our panelists joining us today and helping us. I think this is important. It can be impactful, and then using technology can actually increase the impact you have with motor pool management, and you can incorporate that into your fleet. So I'd like to thank everybody, and we're going to go ahead and end it for today. So good day, all.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.